Flying a plane isn't easy. I've never flown one, but most pilots haven't either, until they've had to fly a real airplane for the first time without any in-plane training, of course. It was hard to train pilots in a plane that wasn't actually being flown tens of thousands of feet in the air, but about 1 century ago, all of that changed. Hello and welcome to Point of View, a podcast that looks into the history of virtual reality. I'm your host Massimo, and I'm going to be taking you on a tour along the past, present, and future of VR. Our last episode brought a new lens to how we see things, but now it's time we look at two new inventions that brought users on a wild yet virtual ride, something I like to call virtual rideality. Okay, I know that's not a real term, but let me finish. We'll begin as we take to the skies with an invention that changed the way we fly, ironically taking place entirely on the ground. It's 1929. America's in the middle of the Great Depression, but fortunately at the end of the First World War. However, we all know it wouldn't be their last. The US needed a stronger military, and a man named Edward Link would be the one to use virtual reality to make that happen. Link created what would be known as the first ever flight simulator, called the Link Trainer. Unlike other inventions in virtual reality so far, this device was electromechanical. This means it was controlled by motors, ones that made pilots in training feel turbulence, movement, and other scenarios that they could be faced with in the air. The only difference was, they were safe on the ground without a thing to worry about, especially if their training got a little too stressful or they forgot what to do. This device allowed pilots in training to operate a simple yet useful device to steer the trainer, which used a rudder and steering column like a real plane. Once the US military heard of the Link Trainer, they made a decision that would affect them for years to come. They thought, we're definitely going to need some of these, but just purchased only 6 of them. So why would they purchase so little? Well, they had to test them out first, before trusting its success in training their future pilots. The mere 6 trainers grew to over 10,000 Link Trainers by World War II, training over 500,000 pilots for the American military. And this thing probably isn't what you're thinking about. It's not some giant cockpit with hundreds of buttons and switches. It looked a lot simpler to operate. Needless to say, the Link Trainer actually looked kind of fun. Imagine one of those small rides that you'd beg your mom to ride after she was done shopping. Trainees would put on their pilot suits, hop into the childlike plane, and strap into a single-seated cockpit. There, they were faced with no more than a wheel to steer, a lever to move up and down, and some meters measuring their altitude, speed, and fuel. Well, hypothetically, of course. It certainly wasn't anything like the flight simulators we have today. The ones that feature fully operational cockpits, a virtual view, and realistic movements. But one thing is for sure. It certainly helped thousands of pilots learn to fly without the fear of falling from the sky on their first test. The only thing the Link Trainer was missing was a first-person view of what it was like to be up in the air. Fortunately, it wouldn't be too long until something of similar nature made us come to our senses. Literally. Alright, so let's fast forward a little. It was the mid to late 1950s, and a man named Morton Heilig had what would seem like a simple idea. He wanted to recreate a bike ride through Brooklyn. But here's the catch. He wanted people to experience a bike ride without actually riding a bike. He wanted the people to be able to sit down in one spot and still be able to experience everything you would while riding a bike. The scenery, the wind running through your hair, the sounds passing you by, and of course, the sights of the Big Apple. In 1962, Morton's dream became a reality with the invention of the Sensorama. It looked pretty huge for something made for virtual reality, at least. Imagine a device that looked like a mix between an arcade machine and one of those eye testing devices that the eye doctor would use. You probably know which one I'm talking about, the uncomfortable one that you had to stick your head into to test your vision. Funny enough, the Sensorama operated in a similar way. All you had to do was sit down, stick your head in a square-shaped hole, and immerse yourself in a joyful ride throughout New York. Users were presented with colored video through a 3D screen, music and sound effects, a vibrating chair, scents and smells, and weather effects such as wind throughout the short film. This was just one of the few short movies that Morton created for his Sensorama, but unfortunately it was too expensive for him to produce and bring to the public. Only a few lucky folks would be able to brag about their futuristic bike ride. But Morton's idea would inspire filmmakers to create four-dimensional movies. You know, the movie theaters that have the shaking seats and shoot out mist and water at you. As weird as this bike ride in a box sounds, it became the birth of 4D cinema. Sure, this thing couldn't fit entirely on your head, but it simulated viewers with more senses other than just sight for a change. It wouldn't be long until the first VR headset was made, but that's a story for another time. So, quite a bit has happened since the stereoscope, huh? From flight simulators to futuristic films, it's clear that there's more history outside a head-mounted screen and harness. Join me in the next episode where I cover the first official virtual reality headset, giving users head-mounted displays and a whole new set of possibilities. Once again, I'm Massimo, and thanks for listening to Point of View. See you all next time.